Hi guys, I'm going to be taking a look at Evan Centopani's diet video titled The Balanced Macro Diet by the YouTube channel Animal.
Hey, what's going on, guys? I'm coming to you today with something that I think will help you very much.
It can also harm you. Bear that in mind, guys, when watching this video. I've not actually seen this video before. It is, I believe, 4 years old, but I just was quite intrigued by the title itself.
I get asked very often, what is the best place to start? How much should I eat? What should my calorie intake look like? How many grams of protein, carbs, and fats should I be eating? And I'm gonna give you something that I think is gonna really help simplify all of that. And the only thing you need to know, okay, is your body weight. So I'm gonna tell you guys 1.25 grams of protein per pound of body weight.
So if you're 400 pounds, you're gonna be eating something like 500 grams of protein. And then say you're 60% body fat, that's got nothing to do with it. So you're just going to be looking at your weight. So in that case, if I want to binge eat protein, then I'm going to be eating nothing but Haribo and Skittles and Mars bars for the next, 2 years until I get to that body weight. Then that's my protein intake. It's based purely off my weight. That's illogical.
All you need to do is know that. Obviously, multiply 1.25 times your body weight. So I'm gonna use myself as an example, right? So for myself, I currently weigh 270 pounds. Times 1.25 grams per pound of body weight gives me 337.5 grams of protein.
It's amazing that the amount is so high. I'm well aware that I did high protein diets in the past, but I definitely don't think they were sensible and regarded as healthy in terms of what is needed or necessary for a bodybuilding athlete. Saying that, 337 grams roughly protein, that's a lot. For a point of reference, Evan weighs maybe 10, 20 pounds more than me, and similar sort of body fat levels, I imagine. Yeah, I'm eating 200 to 250 grams per day. Sometimes less, sometimes a bit more. It depends what my appetite's like. But yeah, generally in that ballpark figure. So I really don't think that he needs over 100 grams of protein more than me per day.
Per day, which is pretty reasonable. If I multiply that times 4 calories per gram of protein, that tells me that on a daily basis, I would be deriving 1,300.
So you've got the ideal number here, the macros, the grammages. Then you're going to come up with another number based on those things, which doesn't even, in a way, correlate to what actually is taken in by your body. You know, the plus or minus thing in terms of food labeling, the 20% legislation that they allow either side, the fact that thermodynamics, your body will essentially use some of that energy to oxidize the food itself. So yeah, the reality is, if you were to actually look at that in a closed combustion environment thing, it's going to be something like 1,000 to 1,600 calories. So basically you're actually overcomplicating the whole system by putting in a calorie amount. So that's not a good idea. It just causes problems in itself.
350 calories from protein. Easy. Okay, now what I'm gonna recommend to you is to simply start off getting the same amount of calories from each macronutrient. I know a lot of you have heard, you should be consuming more carbohydrates.
That sounds like maximum Randall cycle activation right there. I already know where he's going to go with this, and it's not ideal for human health. We'll see.
Hydrates than protein, and more carbohydrates than fat, all different conflicting stuff. Personally, I don't think any of that is really warranted. I think that all 3 macronutrients are valuable.
There's only 2 that are valuable to human beings, protein and fat. The other one, the carbohydrates, not valuable. In times of famine, perhaps, when you've got nothing else to eat. We live in a society nowadays where we can access all the food we need at the amounts what we need. The protein and fat coming from animal foods, the carbohydrates, avoid. Do not eat those. Often high in deuterium, lead to digestive issues, more glycation in the blood, all sorts of things which will effectively age you a lot faster. Not ideal, not balanced.
See the need, at least right off the bat, to have more of one than another. I think 1 to 1 to 1 is a great place to start. And if you then feel, you know what, I don't think I quite need all this fat, I could shift some of this and maybe increase my carbohydrate intake.
You definitely don't want to do that. You definitely want to increase the fat and decrease the carbs. And that's assuming that you're getting proper animal food sources, like I mentioned, so you're not putting in what it looks like here is extra virgin olive oil. He's probably got peanut butter in there somewhere as well. It would not surprise me. We'll see. I'll give him a fair chance.
Or vice versa. You say, you know what, I don't need all these carbohydrates. Let me increase my fat intake a little more. You know, some of us do a little bit better with increased fat. Some of us do better with more carbs in the diet. So if you know that based on that 1.25 grams of protein per pound of body.
What do you mean by do better? To me, well, to twig that point there, but do better. What does do better mean? Train better, have a better physique. I mean, everything for me right now is much easier without the carbs. I'm doing a lot better, if that's what we're talking about. Of course, you can't respond to me, so I'm just talking to a video here, but you get the point, guys. You have to define what you mean when talking about different improvements in either physique, performance, or health outcomes.
Body weight, you're driving X number of calories per day, which for myself is 1,350. If we're going to do a 1 to 1 to 1 ratio, that also means that I would be deriving 1,350 calories per day from carbohydrates. And because carbohydrates also have 4 calories per gram.
If you're going to assume that it takes about 10% of the energy from carbohydrate source to oxidize itself in the body, it can actually be something like 3.6 calories per gram. You know, this is where the calorie thing just falls flat in his face. He's got the grammages right. He knows, you know, he needs to equal out his grammages or whatever he's looking to try to do. The calories thing just comports to a greater problem.
You'd be eating the same number of grams of carbohydrates as you would protein. So now to calculate the fat intake, right, because you can't just have the same number of grams of fats because fats contain 9 calories per gram. We would divide 1,350 calories, divide that by 9, which tells you you'd be having 150 grams of fat per day. So roughly 340 grams of protein, 340 grams of carbs, and 150 grams of fat. That would give us a total amount of calories per day of 4,050. Now,
again, ignoring the macronutrient amounts that he's looking at originally, then going to the overarching feature of a proper diet as being the calorie amount, you know, that's what's going to make or break you. No, false.
Now, as a check, right, to this, to make sure this isn't just completely off, plug it into a BMR calculator, right? Your basal metabolic rate, which would tell you, and of course this isn't exact, it's a little bit different for everybody. We all have different metabolisms, you know, our activity level is a little bit different, but some of the good BMR calculators allow you to put in, you know, your...
All of these are wrong. They're always wrong. They're never exact. Of course, he's just mentioned that, but if I do that for myself right now, it will say, Jonathan, you should be eating 2,800 calories or 3,000 calories. And that's even the ones with your body fat and body weight taken into account. You know, I'm not eating 2,800 calories of food. It's probably close to like 4,000 now. And I'm probably maintaining my weight near enough, you know, sort of thing. Yeah, I don't like these calorie amounts. I think that you should find an amount that you take in through the protein and fat grams if you're eating the carnivore diet. Then find out how much or how little from that point you need to decrease or increase. You know, none of these calculators will tell you. And the best indicator of how much you should be eating is looking at your macros from the past, say 3, 4, 5 months. Look what you've been doing over that time. It's going to give you a good data set to work from and sort of say, okay, my average is say 200 protein, 200 fat, something like that. Then you could think, okay, that's maintained my weight or that's been making me gain weight. Okay, fine. Well, then perhaps lower the protein or lower the fat. Check your symptoms. Consult with a coach like myself to work out what you need to do as an individual. It's very important to get this right, especially if you're talking about getting real results in the gym and body composition.
Your height, your weight, your age, your activity level. And if I do that, okay, what I came up with, now, if I put in that I'm moderately active, right? And I take place in exercise or sports 3 to 5 days a week, that tells me that I would need 3,750 calories per day. We'll probably...
Well, if you're taking exogenous hormones and different medications, for example, does that increase the amount? I personally don't see any of these bodybuilders actually eating that little, at least when they have a substantial amount of muscle mass.
A little bit more than moderately active 3 to 5 days a week. I do cardio daily. I train hard with weights 4 to 5 days a week. So if I were to put it...
So you're actually very active or extremely active. You're not moderately active. That's something I see people get very wrong very often. So yeah, record your output properly, accurately. There are guidelines to do it. Follow the guidelines and they'll tell you how much to put into these calculators if you're going to use them. My suggestion is to not do that.
That I'm working hard 6 to 7 days a week, that tells me I need 4,100 calories. So somewhere between 37 and 4,100 should be about right. And we ended up just around 4,000 for my body weight. So I think it's actually pretty accurate. And of course, this is to serve as a starting point. A very solid starting point though. I mean, this is I think, in my opinion, pretty on. And this...
Yeah, this goes back to the point I made earlier about the starting point, about finding what you've been doing to maintain your weight the last few months or period of time, weeks, for example. You look at your macros from that period of time and adjust from there. You don't need to go online to look at macro calculators to find out what is the best diet for you. You know, the data is there in front of you. You shouldn't export that or outsource that information to somewhere else to tell you what you should do. You know, the facts are there. The results are there if you want them. You just have to look back at what you're doing, find out the information that you've been doing, you know, work out how it all comes together, consult with a coach, speak to someone that knows what they're doing, adjust from there.
This would get most of us probably 80 to 90% of the way before, you know, you'd have to really fine tune things or really mess with the diet a lot. But let's talk food sources, right? You're saying, okay, I now know how many calories I should be consuming each day, how many grams of protein, carbs, and fats I should be taking in, but what am I gonna eat? Well, I laid out before you guys here a bunch of different foods that really, if I were to pick what I would need, you know, to comprise my diet,
there's probably two things right there I can see to comprise your diet: the eggs and that nice juicy steak with the cap on it. It looks like a sirloin, perhaps. It's probably all you need, I think.
This would be essentially all I would need. Don't need much beyond this, and this actually might even be a little bit more than what's needed. But to give you guys an idea, right, and let's start with protein because that's what everybody's always thinking about. Obviously, whole eggs. You could, you know, if you're trying to manipulate the protein and fat ratio, you could, you know, put in, let's say, a couple whole eggs and, you know.
The funny thing about this is I always see bodybuilders get rid of the egg whites, like he's about to say, and just keep the eggs. But then they'll keep in the fatty steak that he's got just below in the picture there. It doesn't make sense. Just eat a bit less of both of them. You know? Don't waste the whites. Don't waste the yolks. Eat the food as it comes in its natural food source and form. That's what's the best thing, I think, for everyone. I don't think you need to be omitting different things because it ruins your macros or ruins your calorie intake, you know?
Take the yolks out of some and put a greater proportion of egg whites. Personally, I like whole eggs. I don't like consuming egg whites. I don't digest them as well. I feel that I digest eggs much better when they're whole. And obviously the fat and the cholesterol, very important, the cholesterol is very valuable. It's beneficial. A lot of times people say,
it's what you form hormones out of. Do not avoid cholesterol. Never.
Say, well, what about cholesterol? Is that something I should be worried about? Again, as we get a little bit further along and more studies come out, the association or the link between dietary cholesterol intake and actual blood cholesterol, it's being shown that it's not very strong. Red meat.
It's not strong at all. It's piss weak.
Red meat, great protein source, obviously. For any of you guys out there with a little bit more experience, you know, you've had a controlled diet for a period of time, generally you'll be able to note that you're a bit fuller and a bit stronger when you've got red meat in your diet regularly. Doesn't have to.
Why not eat it every day if it makes you feel and train and perform that well? You know, it seems a bit counterintuitive to have it sometimes, you know.
Every day, at least a few times a week, I think is the bare minimum. Chicken, you know, for most of us, chicken is a go-to because it's high in protein, it's lean, it doesn't taste too bad, it's cheap. Another thing not...
I don't know about eating chicken like I used to 5 times a day. Again, that was horrible. At least if I wasn't adding in like loads of sauce and spices and stuff, God, I can't tolerate chicken much anymore now. I mean, I have like chicken thighs sometimes or drumsticks, but it's seldom that I'm going to have that in my diet every day, I think, nowadays.
Shown here, fish. I'm a huge fan of fish, especially a fish like cod, because it's light, it's flaky, it digests easily. A lot of the higher fat fish, you know, salmon is very common. Unfortunately, most of the salmon that you see is going to be farm raised, so the fats contained in it not going to be quite as beneficial. But if you have...
I've looked into this. People will always contradict what I say, which is fine. They're allowed to have a different opinion. My opinion is farm salmon is fine, as long as it's sourced from somewhere that isn't putting loads of junk into the farm raised salmon itself, into the feed, putting hormones and things. At least where I'm from, the legislation in the country that I come from in England doesn't allow a lot of these toxic things to go into their salmon. Other countries, like perhaps the US, like where Evan is from, they do allow it. So there's a defined difference. So not all farmed salmon is bad. At the same time, not all wild salmon is good. You know, you have to be careful about sourcing things and understanding the legislation of the country where you come from. Ideally, you'd get it all freshly caught without all the extra potential nonsense in it, but we do what we can.
Have a meal, like I said, like say cod and rice, then you would add some fats to that, whether it's something like olive oil, great fat, because it digests well.
Rancid as hell. Does not account for contaminants within it when it is tested. It could have potentially high levels of aldehyde, which is a mitochondrial disruptor, not ideal for the human diet. If you are going to eat anything like this, make sure you're buying probably the most expensive one, probably in a health food shop, probably organic, probably, you know, created in such a way that doesn't cause so much rancidity in it. When you buy it, you store it in a fresh place, somewhere cool, not out in the sunlight. You know, if you're going to do this sort of thing, just make sure you source it properly. It's something you've got to be quite considerate and concerned about, I think.
It's been shown to actually, people who consume it regularly tend to burn more fat. It's good for your liver. Something like nuts, very high in monounsaturated fats. Walnuts here actually are a little bit higher in polyunsaturated fats. They're a little...
Yeah, but how much of that polyunsaturated fat, Evan, converts itself into EPA and DHA? Assuming we had the right genetic polymorphisms to do that, it might be a couple of percent. Then you're getting all the toxic polyunsaturated fats within that still. Not ideal for human health.
A little higher in omega-3s, but something like almonds, you know, high in monounsaturated fat.
High in oxalates. I think I mentioned this before to you guys at some point, but I think 5 to 8 of those per day is enough oxalate to cause, and was at least indicated, to create a level of kidney toxicity. It is disruptive to your kidney function. Something to avoid.
That's all very good. Also, peas, something like peas, beans. People ask a lot of times about legumes. You know, what about those? I say great. You know,
no, not great. Probably full of lectins, things which disrupt your gut function, things which disrupt the mineral absorption of the food that you're taking in. Overall, a net negative. People use them for the extra fiber to bulk out your meal, but they're not foods for human beings. Definitely not.
Not shown here is rice, but we've got some cream of rice. But, you know, if you were going to have, you know, just the traditional rice and beans in conjunction with a piece of fish or a piece of chicken, that's a great meal, okay? Let's talk.
I challenge anyone who's watching this to think that that's a great meal, to have that alone without any spices, any sauces. So you just have the rice and the beans, maybe the fish as well. To me, the only palatable thing on that plate would probably be the fish. That's maybe just with a bit of salt. But the other foods, you're not going to be having them plain, guys. Come on. Get the times, it's not going to happen. It's always the other foods you add on to make these non-foods seem more palatable, in my opinion.
Carbohydrates. Now, there's a lot of discussion about gluten. A lot of people feel that they have gluten sensitivities, intolerances, etc. And in that case, the best thing to do would be to opt for gluten-free carbohydrate sources, such as...
Ideally, don't eat them, because then you don't have to opt for anything. It makes your thought, anxiety, and choice processes a lot more simpler. But yeah, we are all we all have some kind of intolerability to gluten, some more than others, of course. But yeah, it's not something we want to be having in our diet. For the most part, it's only been in our diet for maybe 10,000 years, if you look back historically. So it's quite a modern, new invention in terms of the grains we eat and things which contain gluten. And that's in contrast to the 350,000 years or so that we've been eating predominantly meat and fat from animals. It's a new food. We haven't quite, in some people's cases, built up that genetic tolerability to it that causes the gluten intolerance.
As, rice, cream of rice. Oats typically are gluten-free. The only reason people with gluten sensitivities will shy away from them is because of cross-contamination. Potatoes, unlike the other things I've shown here, they're actually a vegetable rather than a grain, so they tend to digest very easily. They're very high in minerals and vitamins. Does it matter whether it's a sweet potato or white potato? No. Sweet potato, though, is going to be a little bit higher in fiber, which for most of us, that's a good thing.
No, that's a bad thing for all of us. The only cause and effect study on fiber shows that we should not be eating it at all. Every other study on that is absolute trash, nonsense. It's confuted in a lot of ways. There's no actual cause and effect studies to show that fiber is in any way beneficial to the human diet. I'd actually be looking to decrease the fiber content of the foods I was eating if I was eating this kind of thing. The potatoes, for example, I'll be skinning them, I'll be boiling them, find a way to get rid of all the extra starch in them if I could. That's basically it. But yeah, they're not palatable food either. If you have a plain potato boiled, even mashed up on its own, no butter, no cream, no milk, no spices, no condiments, no cheese, no tuna, whatever you have with it. Yeah, it's not a palatable food. You're not going to enjoy eating potatoes alone.
Here's farina, which is a wheat-based cereal, but it's a little easier to digest because it's essentially very processed, which is something I want to talk about. People talk about processed things and is that bad, right? For example, farina. From my perspective, no. I mean, it's not like we're bringing in additives and preservatives and chemicals or artificial things. Wheat that has been processed, the only thing that it really does is make it easier to digest. And a lot of times people will ask me, well, what about something like sugar? Is sugar terrible? Now, I'm not gonna say make sugar the basis of your diet. Absolutely not. The only reason that sugar is not really great is, number one, it digests super quickly. So if you're using...
Then you've got foods that are high in fiber which are digesting slower. But now you're talking about things digesting quicker. Complete cognitive dissonance when it comes to talking about what kind of digestion we want from different foods. It's always one or the other. You want to slow food down by having the high fiber content. Then you want to speed up by having sugar. Which one is it? Choose one and go with it,
Obviously, none of us are going to sit down and have a meal where we're going to have chicken breast, some nuts, and then a side of sugar, right? We're not going to do that. But if we're going to have, say, for example, it's breakfast time, and you're going to have some whole eggs, and you choose to have some cream of rice cereal, is it wrong to add, a tablespoon of sugar to it? In my opinion, no. I don't think that's a bad thing. The only thing...
Anytime you add sugar to your diet, it is a bad thing. Every single time.
Negative you could really say about sugar in that instance, I mean, we're only having a small amount, only a small percentage of our...
Just a small bit, just to make it more palatable. Yeah, I mean, try cream of rice without the extra sugar in it. You won't enjoy it.
Our carbohydrates in that meal are coming from sugar. We don't have to worry about the rapid digestion of it because all the fat contained in the eggs, okay, it's going to slow it down. So it's not like we have to worry about spiking our blood sugar or sending our insulin.
So you'll just have not necessarily a spike, but a really long bump of blood sugar, which just tires you out as time goes on. It will sit in your stomach and really make you feel crap. So I understand what you're saying, but it's not an ideal situation to be in.
through the roof, anything like that. Now, fructose is not an ideal carbohydrate for a bodybuilder because it is not easily stored as glycogen. Glucose, on the other hand, yes, it's readily stored as glycogen. Something like dextrose, which is entirely glucose, that's great, but of course none of us are gonna get.
I wouldn't advise eating that, guys. It causes about half people I speak to digestive distress, so avoid any kind of dextrose, maltodextrin stuff.
Some dextrose and, put it in our oatmeal in the morning. But a simple carbohydrate combined with a more complex carbohydrate as part of a meal that's also containing proteins and fats, all it is just makes it easier to digest, okay? Absolutely no problem with it, in my opinion. Let's talk vegetables, right? Because this is something that I think are very, very important, and a lot of
None of them are important. They shouldn't be eaten.
Builders underconsume. Broccoli, I mean, that's kind of a bodybuilder go-to. Both broccoli and kale are both cruciferous vegetables, which have...
I think I'd leave them to the animals that are meant to be eating them, definitely not humans. We don't have high concentrations of cellulase in our guts to tolerate these kind of foods. We are a monogastric animal, not a polygastric animal, so we can't therefore churn out these foods through different stomach chambers to digest it properly. Avoid these. We don't need them in the diet.
Have been shown to help prevent cancer, lower estrogen.
No, they haven't been shown that at all. They've been indicated to do that. They have not been shown to do that.
Estrogen levels in the body. More than anything, they're concentrated sources of nutrition, right? They're loaded with vitamins, minerals. They help improve your digestion.
That you can't ironically digest. That you can't ironically actually absorb and assimilate anyway. Non-foods don't belong in the diet.
Keep your digestive tract clean, keep you regular, keep things moving. Very, very, very important. I think it's great, for bodybuilders as part of a...
Guys, I challenge you to do this. Eat like, I don't know what he's got, some kale, some broccoli. Eat that with your meal. Then eat a carnivore meal with just the animal foods in it. Tell me which one of those meals will digest better. The one you're adding more stuff to, or the one that you're eating less food of. Come on, it's a simple thought process.
A meal, whether you have some steamed vegetables, whether it's some steamed kale or some steamed broccoli, or you choose to make a salad, you have some lettuce and carrots and some olive oil and vinegar, great. You should be having that with every meal. Okay, vegetables, very, very important. People ask oftentimes about fruit. What about fruit? And again, kind of like what we just discussed, because I don't personally believe that just some, a little bit of sugar is bad in the diet, and obviously fruit, whether it's bananas, pineapple.
It's a silent, slow killer. A little bit isn't bad per se, but it can be, and it will be eventually if you take the piss.
They do contain, all fruits contain a significant amount of sugar. The question is, what is the composition of that sugar? So, something like an apple, which tends to be very high in fructose, is probably a little bit less ideal. Whereas something like pineapple, although it is high in overall sugar, it's primarily glucose, okay? It's a very low fructose fruit. It also has the added benefit of being loaded with enzymes,
And that's only if you have it raw, not canned. A lot of people will end up actually processing these foods, cooking with them, which kills a lot of the enzymes in them. So be careful if you want to start justifying eating these things with the proteolytic enzymes contained within them.
A small side of pineapple as part of a meal, not a bad thing. My advice would be to steer clear of really high fructose fruits. I think if anything, it's just a more readily digested carbohydrate source. But so long as it's part of a meal, we don't have to worry about rapid digestion because it's going to be slowed down by the proteins and the fats in that meal anyways. So
it's not going to be readily available because it's slowly broken down. Then you're saying it's a rapidly digested carbohydrate source. Again, it's mixed match of information. It's not clear what he's trying to put forward here.
What's going to mean is easier digestion. In all of this, discussion about protein, carbs, fats, all these food sources, I would be remiss if I didn't mention good old water. Now, this is something that so many people
Yeah, you can have that one, guys. That's fine.
Overlook. Okay, yes, it's just water, but let's keep in mind, you could probably go for about a month without eating, but you could probably only go for a few days without drinking before you die. So that should give you an indication as to how important realistically how much more important water is than even all this food we're discussing. So get started, right? Using the foods that I've shown you here. How do you know how many grams of protein and calories and fats, etc. in a piece of steak? Find a good online resource. nutritiondata.com is a really reliable one. I use that. That'll tell.
Yeah, I use that one quite a lot. It is reliable, to be fair. The most important thing of any sort of food source, if it's going to be a real food that, you know, isn't processed, doesn't come in packets. So, you know, I'm talking about the steak, eggs, fish perhaps, if you go to the fishmongers, dairy. The most important thing is to be consistent with your sourcing. So if you're always going to the supermarket and buying a ribeye steak, there's going to be a level of consistency amongst those ribeye steaks that you buy from there. So try and stay on the same food source if you can. And obviously, buy the best food you can with the money that you have, and make sure it's affordable. Don't sort of get out of your way to spend yourself into a big sort of lump, you know. So don't really spend so much that it starts to make your life more difficult or stressful or challenging. Just do what you can with the money you have.
Tell you the amount of, say, you know, protein, carbs, fats. You could look it up, you know, on a per ounce basis. So figure out your diet. And once you have your diet figured out, generally it's good probably to break it up between 5 and 6 meals a day. You don't want to be eating too much at a sitting. And
that's less of a problem when you eat a species appropriate diet. If I have 3 meals in a day or something, well, usually 4 at the moment, but if I have 3, it sits just fine. I'm not bloated. I can go around, walk around. I don't feel tired immediately after. As soon as you start adding in these like man-made foods, that's when the problems start happening. You need to split it up more. You get that blood glucose roller coaster, which I'm sure most bodybuilders go through, which is why a lot of them actually use exogenous insulin. So not ideal, definitely not. You don't need 5 or 6 meals per day, guys, unless you're eating, you know, a carnivore diet with kilos of meat. Even then, I'd say probably not even that much. It's very much relative to the output that you have and the body mass, the muscle mass, sorry, that you have. So yeah, be considerate about the amount of meals you're having. You don't need lots of meals.
You don't want to be eating 8 times a day because you'll be eating into the midnight hours. See how it goes, right? If you start losing weight rapidly, then you probably need to add a bit more calories, right? And you can just add it evenly from each macronutrient source. If you're putting on weight rapidly and it's not good weight, knock it down a bit. If you get going and you say, geez, man, this seems like a lot of carbohydrates. I don't think I need all these carbs and I'm actually craving fat. Then don't be afraid to lower your carbohydrates and increase your fat intake.
You'll never hit that bliss point with carbohydrates. They're often made to be in such a way that you just want to eat them more and more. Fat is very satiating, so is protein. So make sure your diet is balanced around those 2 macronutrients based on what your individual body needs.
But starting with a 1-to-1-to-1, it's very balanced for most people. And I've been doing this for years, not only with myself, but I work with a lot of people. And I start most people this way. And most people generally say, man, I feel good. I don't have cravings.
Yeah, probably because the protein intake is more than what they're having prior to this. So if, for example, we know the average American individual is eating, say, 20% of their calories from protein, we know it could not be enough. It might be that they're only eating 50 grams of protein per day, but they need 100. Yes, as soon as you hit that bliss point, that the point where their body's running better because they have the nutrient density they need from the protein they're eating, then yeah, of course, they'll feel a bit better. So I don't think it's a case of spreading out the energy intake through different macronutrients to create some sort of balanced formula. I think it was the fact that those people were lacking in some nutrients from specific food groups, such as the proteins.
I feel balanced, and it makes sense that they would. So this is really what I advocate to you guys. Look, it's simple, it's direct, it's easy to plug in, and like I said, all you need to know.
I think you guys know what I'm going to say. It'd be so much easier if you just ate like 4 or 5 foods, maybe on a mixed carnivore diet. I can see here there's probably at least 10 different foods. That's going to be effectively twice as challenging to plug these foods in. Makes the whole process much more confusing, Anyway, I hope you enjoyed that video. It's quite interesting to see what another bodybuilder is doing. And I just want to mention this video. I do respect Evan Centopani as a bodybuilder. He's one of the actual first bodybuilders that I ever met. And he does actually stress in some of his more recent videos the importance of animal foods. He cooks with lard, so bacon grease. He eats organ meats, different things like that. You know, focuses things on red meat. So he is much better informed than most bodybuilders. But yeah, thank you guys for watching. If you like this video, please leave a little like below. Leave a comment also. Let me know your thoughts. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Thank you.